Bismillahi walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So we reached at this point chapter 9 of the book Healthy Relationships by Rachel Chapman. And in this section, she entitled it How to Improve Your Social Skills, but I put this under the title of Marriage and Communication. Chapter 9 and chapter 10 are going to be dealing with communication skills, social skills, how to relate to one another, how to deal with one another, how to communicate with one another in action and in speech. Chapter 10 deals a lot more with the whole issue of facial gestures, body language, and so on and so forth, which is extremely important because what we find at times is that when people don't realize how it is that they are communicating with each other in terms of what types of facial expressions that they're making, they send messages which can be misunderstood. So we have to master our communication. She talks a little bit about the whole issue of using hand gestures and the issue of facial expressions and the way that we present ourselves, the way that we sit, the way that we present our bodies, and how it is that our bodies communicate certain messages. And it is important for us to be conscious of that type of behavior. And it is important for us to master the way that it is that we present ourselves. Now, one of the things I want to make sure that we clearly understand is that in this regard, in this issue, and how it is that we communicate with our bodies and the type of body language that we use, it is cultural and it is personal. Each individual has specific things that they do and how they speak and how it is that they present themselves that is unique to that person, right? And then there's also things that they say, things that they do, which are cultural, right? Which come from their culture or even maybe come from, the society that they live in or the type of group that they affiliate with. So we have to be careful when we start talking about the issue of body language that we misinterpret. But let me say something to you. The more that we live with a person, the more that we interact with a person, we begin to understand them to a certain degree. But when there's a disconnection that takes place between us and our friends or our partner or even our relatives, sometimes we begin to misunderstand and we begin to misread. But in any event, we'll get to that point when we get to chapter 10. Today, we wanted to talk about the issue of interaction, right? And how it is that we communicate at that level when we interact with each other. One of the things that she brings up that's extremely important is that each individual, each human being has the need to belong and to feel loved, to be recognized, accepted. There is in psychology, in Western psychology, something that's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the hierarchy of needs, it's basically presented kind of like in a triangle form. And there's a series of needs that are there that we have as human beings. And of those needs that are foundational, that are basic, that are universal, is the need to belong, the need to be loved, the need to be recognized. And so in a relationship, that feeling has to be there that we belong in that relationship, that we're recognized, that we're loved. Once that is broken, that sense of belonging, that sense of feeling a part of that relationship, that sense of feeling love, that's when we have some serious issues. And in the last chapter, we dealt with the whole issue of not showing interest, right? A partner not showing interest in us, how that's a sign of a disconnect in the relationship. And at the extreme level, that can mean that you have checked out of the relationship and maybe even started another relationship. And we mentioned that it's dangerous for us to think that just because there's some signs of this interest that automatically we're saying that the partner completely checked out. No, there may be some struggles that that partner is having. There may be some reasons why it is that that partner is doing that. So I hope that right now we're clear with the issue, the principle that we all have a need to feel loved, to be accepted, to have a sense of belonging. That's important. Our relationships, when they're healthy, we get that from them. When they're disrupted, something is going on there. One of the things that she mentions, which is important, is that she mentioned that the whole concept of being introverted and concept of being extroverted. And basically, what that means is that some people are very comfortable with socializing with people, with interacting with them, and other people are kind of uh, withdrawn or kind of shy. And so that this in we can say that it's about the orientation of the person. Some cultures they teach us at an early age how to have that social personality, but here in the U.S. we find that also we have those people that they like to just stay to themselves, right? It's not part of really how they learn how to be, right? And so if if you like to stay to yourself, you may have to learn how to be with others. And if you're an extrovert and you like to constantly associate and constantly talk and be with others in that way, you may have to learn how to pull back. So it's a balance that we have to have. And so these are personality traits, right? Each individual has a certain way that they deal with how they express themselves and what they're comfortable with in this regard. Some people are very comfortable with socializing with people, and other people are comfortable with only dealing with those people that they know, or dealing with people when they feel certain things, like they feel safe, they don't feel threatened by people. Some people are good at dealing with one-on-one. Some people are good at being in a group. In any event, when we start talking about a relationship between a husband and a wife, whether newlywed or whether married for a long time, we have to realize that what we have to realize that we have to identify what type of person we're dealing with in this regard. Are we dealing with someone that likes to socialize? Are we dealing with someone that kind of likes to be more private and kind of to themselves? What kind of person are we dealing with? Are we dealing with someone that may not always like to talk? Are we dealing with someone that likes to talk and communicate? It's important for us to get a grasp of, is the partner that I'm with an extrovert or introvert, and what am I? Am I an extrovert or an introvert? And it doesn't mean that necessarily you're clashing with each other if you're opposites, but it does mean that you have to complement each other. And if you're two introverts, then that means that now you're gonna have to learn how to be comfortable with that. If you're two extroverts, you're gonna have to learn how to be comfortable with that. If you're an introvert and an extrovert, you're gonna have to learn how to be comfortable with that. In either case, we're going to have to learn how to deal with each other on those levels, how to build the relationship in that regard. In what regard? In the regard of what kind of personality orientation do I have when it comes to how I express myself? Am I one that is extroverted or one that's introverted? Here she says introverts are great observers and listeners. They will absorb everything around them, although they may not contribute to a conversation. Even if they have something beneficial to offer, they're shy and sometimes they're insecure. Fear of saying the wrong thing and coming off as foolish will keep an introvert from opening up in the conversation. This is an issue, right? That fear can lead to not really participating in the relationship, right? So one of the things that we have to realize that as Muslims, we develop a certain set of skills, like the whole concept of saying assalamu alaikum, the concept of smiling, the concept that there's more in dealing with people and the hardship that come from that than there is in retreating from people. There's a lot of teaching that we find in the prophetic example, which are community relationship building skills and behaviors and characteristics. So we as Muslims, we although we may have this certain type of orientation, we may be extroverted, but we may not do it in the right way. So we still have to learn what is healthy, because some people are extroverted, they talk a lot, but they say the wrong things when it comes to dealing with other people. Some people are extroverted, but they're not empathetic, they're not sensitive to people's needs, right? And so some people are introverted and they may be overly sensitive, right? And some people are introverted, but at the same time, they know how to be empathetic. They know, that there's a time and a place to speak, and so they may incline to being silent. But when it's necessary to communicate, they communicate. When it's necessary to interact, they interact. So that's why, as Muslims, we have to look at how we develop ourselves in our character, our khuluq, right? Because part of our khuluq is how we deal with ourselves, how we deal with Allah, and how we deal with people, right? And so there's characteristics which are characteristics that go into the Muslim personality or the Muslim persona. So it's not like she is highlighting this issue of being introverted, and then she's kind of bringing up some of the negatives of that. But there also can be negatives to be extroverted if you don't have good manners, right? And so even though she's talking about the issue of an introvert being shy, and then she says, and oftentimes insecure, not all introverts are insecure. Some introverts, they are cautious of what they say because they don't want to offend another person, right? And so that's extremely important to understand, right? So that in reality, it needs its own chapter. The whole idea of introverts and extroverts, she just hitting upon that really lightly, like the whole idea of love languages, to understand what what way is it that your partner likes to receive and communicate love. Love languages is not to say that a person is only this way or that way, but it's to teach us that there's that idea of love languages that we find in the book Love Languages is there to teach us that there's different ways by which we can communicate and receive love. And this is the same thing when it comes to the issue of being introverted and extroverted. It's just a way, this categorization, this classification is just a way to teach us that some people, they are expressive and some people are not so expressive, right? And so then we have to learn, how does our partner communicate in that regard? Are they more expressive or less expressive? And then there we work on creating a balance in the relationship. Communication allows us to master our ability to share ideas and share emotion, right? And that's why we say that communication is something that is constantly worked on and learned, right? And it has to do with connecting with other people. And that communication comes in both words and actions, right? The way that we speak to others and the way that we treat each other. One of the things that she mentions that's extremely important is how it is that technology has broken down our ability to communicate, right? Because of the way that social media and texting language and so on and so forth, it has limited the necessity to pick words, right? And so when we communicate with each other, we're picking words and we're trying to, and the more masterful that we are at communicating, and the more that we educate ourselves, we're trying and working on expressing ourselves properly so that people can understand where we're coming from, right? And so that's work. That's work to learn exactly what it is that I feel and have a word for it, or how it is that I should say something so that it accurately communicates to another person what's going on in my mind and in my world, so to speak. That takes time and practice, right? And so that's something that we have to think about, how it is that that has broken down and how it is that we have developed anti-social behavior. And a lot of us, many of us have become almost introverted in a negative sense, in that we're scared to interact with others. We're scared to go into relationships because there's been such a breakdown in communication due to the changes in lifestyle that have been brought about by social media, but also due to maybe past experiences that we have had that are traumatic, or bad experiences that we have had in relationships. So when you combine those two things, our bad past experiences, our maybe traumatic experiences, along with the breakdown in communication, it makes communication all the more difficult. And so what ends up happening is that when there's conflict, we really don't know how to communicate. And because, like, for instance, in the online world, it's so easy to block people or cut people off, we also begin to have that same lifestyle approach when it comes to our relationships, that we will just cut people off. We'll just shut them out. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to learn how to agree and disagree, right? And so communication is the basis of it. The foundation of it is understanding ourselves and understanding others. So we don't necessarily have to communicate with someone to be right, but we should communicate with someone to understand where they're coming from and connect with them. And then at a higher level, so that we're able to express ourselves as well, right? But you see there, I put others first, right? So if each person is putting the other person first, then that other person feels connected and they feel like they're part of you. Now, what happens is that if another person if one of the people that is communicating is not thinking about the other person, then there's a breakdown in the communication, and one person may feel slighted or they may feel like they don't have a space. So we have to learn how to be empathetic. We have to learn how to think about each other. So one of the things that she says that's important is not to assume things. Assumptions can be dangerous. So before you come to accuse somebody of something, especially when it comes to infidelity or when it comes to a behavior, be sure that that you're not moving from superstition. Be sure that you're accurate in what it is that you're saying. So don't assume things, because you can hurt someone by assumption. And for us in Islam, the issue of tatabbut, or the issue of verifying what it is that's going on, and being careful of accusing people of behaviors, that's very important, right? That's very important. That's from the Quranic teachings itself. We find that in Surah Al-Hujurat, the issue of tabayyun, right? The issue of making sure that information that comes our way, you know what I'm saying, or what types of thought, you know what I'm saying, that we have, that is something that is accurate. She says, part of learning how to communicate with each other is not only learning how to disagree and learning how to listen to other people and learning not to assume things, but also smiling with other people. She talks about the issue of maintaining eye contact, right? And with this is cultural to a certain extent, but if the other person knows that by you maintaining eye contact, that you're respectful, because in some cultures, eye contact is considered disrespectful, especially between parents and children. But eye contact shouldn't be looked at as something that's disrespectful, so to speak. It should be understood that there's interest, right? And we, in this society, we have to teach our children how to maintain eye contact. And in our relationships, that's important, right? To put the phone aside, to focus, and to give our partner the clear understanding that you are giving them full attention. And part of demonstrating that you're giving them full attention is that you are looking at them, right? And so that is an important skill to learn, right? But we also have to realize that comes, that people take it in different ways based upon culture. But here she's teaching us that maintaining eye contact, is showing that we have interest. The other thing that she says is that in our conversations, we should be positive. So that means that we have to learn how to select positive words, right? And then she talks about this point, and we're going to tone this down and come to an end and pick this up next week. She talks about being cognizant, being conscientious of what type of body language that it is that you use. Are you like this? Are you making these types of expressions? Are you never making any eye contact? Are you on your phone? Or at the first time somebody calls you, you're ready to leave out of the conversation? Like, in other words, your body language demonstrates to the other person if you're there with that person. So we have to be careful, and we'll talk about the body language issues later on. She says that a good way to build communication skills is to be involved with each other in doing things. And I agree with that 100%, whether it's exercise, whether it is, doing an activity together, like taking a class, or going to the masjid, or doing things together. Not just the issue of talking but doing things together, finding things that can be done that will allow you to bond in different ways. And that's an ongoing process. And lastly, she mentions the issue, and I want to close with this, of making sure that you recognize the good in the other person. And she says, offer praise. And let the other person realize that you acknowledge their good, and having good intentions in how it is that you deal with them, right? And making sure that your intention and how you deal with them maintains itself as being positive and good and loving, and so on and so forth. And be helpful, right? Be helpful towards the other person, right? And show that you're there, you're supportive in their times of hardship as well as in their times of success. And focus on yourself. Focus on yourself from the angle of your health, your attitude. Carry yourself in the best of manners. And these sets of behaviors and this orientation, it allows us to be able to reshape the way it is that we're communicating with each other, because we're showing interest, we're involved, we're sensitive, we're empathetic, we're listening, we're giving attention, we're present, so on and so forth. And the energy that we're bringing is one that's motivating, that's positive, that's hopeful, that shows that we care. And with that, we end. The next week, we'll pick up on the more difficult part of this, which is the issue of body language and how it is that that can throw off a relationship. But I wanted to stay within that orbit or in that circle of those characteristics that we can inject into the way that we interact with each other, in terms of how it is that our attitude is, our speech and our action, and how it is that we communicate attention and interest. Those things, they revive the relationship and they bring a good energy and they give the person a sense of hope.